interesting visit, perhaps not surprising, but this was really a singular focus from Donald Trump on businesses affected, on whether or not people feel safe. Is there any risk he has here in such a singular focus and not wanting to, engage in the broader protest movement?
Yes, there is. There's actually a couple of risks here for Trump. You're completely right about his singular focus. This is one city. There are a few cities that are being ravaged by protests in the United States, but there are hundreds of cities that are being ravaged by coronavirus. And so we've had a slew of polling released today showing that even on that singular focus that Trump has on safety, for example, in Wisconsin, Biden is much preferred by voters on his stance on policing and criminal justice. So Trump really is taking this singular approach, and it could be a risk if he ignores the other crises that are grappling the country at the moment.
Interesting to note as well, so Donald Trump didn't meet the family of Jacob Blake. He was shot several times in the back by a police officer. And he did expand on his views on police officers that use excessive force. This was Donald Trump in an interview with Fox News.
Shooting the guy in the back many times, I mean, couldn't you have done something different? Couldn't you have wrestled? In the meantime, he might have been going for a weapon, and, there's a whole big thing there. But they choke. Just like in a golf tournament, they miss a 3-foot...
You're not comparing it to golf, because, of course, that's what the media...
I'm saying people choke.
People panic.
Choke.
Yeah.
And people are bad people. You have both. You have some bad people, and they choke.
I mean, again, we do know that there is a big division right now in the US, and plenty of people... the biggest concern for them is whether or not they feel safe, and some of the violence of the protest movement. But there's got to be a danger that the centre, the slim centre in US politics just finds that sort of analogy pretty off-putting.
Absolutely. Trump is right. Police officers are humans and they have an occupation, and people do generally fail in occupations, but there are some occupations where failure is unacceptable. The classic example is airline pilots. We don't accept choking among airline pilots. There are just some occupations where that can't be the case. So that is definitely a very, very sore point among minority voters in the United States who for decades have experienced choking, as we might want to call it, over and over again and disproportionately. So that certainly doesn't fly well with a lot of people. But again, it's quite clear that the Trump campaign has sort of decided to lean on this Nixon era, Reagan era celebration of the police force and protecting police rather than protecting police and their human errors, as well as people in cities like Kenosha.
As we've been saying, it's still not easy for Joe Biden. Look, as you say, you can understand the fury, particularly amongst the black community. So many, completely devastating police shootings that seemingly a lot of these, people were completely innocent. But some of these protests, some of the mindless destruction that Donald Trump was showing people, was walking alongside, does paint a difficult picture for Joe Biden as to how he sort of sits on this. So he came out and said this. He was keen to talk about what he sees as the protest movement, the legitimate one.
Rioting is not protesting. Looting is not protesting. Setting fires is not protesting. None of this is protesting. It's lawlessness, plain and simple. And those who do it should be prosecuted. Fires are burning, and we have a president who fans the flames rather than fighting the flames. But we must not burn. We have to build.
And one suspects we'll hear that over and over. Elliot, will it convince people? I mean, how much does the Trump line about Democratic mayors and governors hit home?
Again, in the polling we've seen today, it just doesn't seem to be shifting people. A lot of analysis after the Republican National Convention was that point might... We've had 5 or 6 high-quality polls come out today that still show Biden with a very handy lead. About 7 points on average, and also leads in battleground states. And again, leads a Fox News poll today in Wisconsin had Biden ahead of Trump on policing. So this is certainly, there's a risk here for the Biden campaign as well, that if they go too hard against some of the broader peripheral aspects of this movement, that they could start to lose the trust of voters. Biden was never the overwhelming favourite among younger people. The generations that we're seeing involved in this protest movement, they never really trusted Biden. They sort of ended up with Biden at the end of the primary contest. So there is a high degree of risk that Biden could alienate some of his younger supporters and the Democrats' younger supporters, and it's going to be a difficult battle for their campaign messaging in the next couple of months.
Yeah, well, I guess then you get to the classic point of voter turnout. We've been showing some of the key polls in those states, Wisconsin, Florida, Pennsylvania as well. How do we compare where we're at right now? The closing and the polling seem to happen to a small extent, but not as much as the Trump campaign would like. 2 months out this time compared to last time when it was Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, how does the polling match up?
Biden is undoubtedly doing better, but we just always have to keep in mind that over the 4 years to date of the Trump administration, he's had a very stable base, and it's only recently that this has changed. One of the golden rules in polling is that if you have a supporter who's been with you for a long time, and they shift away, they are liable to come back quickly. It could be a transient trend. So I think we'll see further tightening of the polls. It's just the way these things go. But at the moment, certainly Joe Biden is in a better position than Hillary Clinton was in 2016.
Elliot, Brennan, appreciate your thoughts. We'll talk to you again in the lead up to the election. Thank you.